So today I wanted to talk about how to spot the covert narcissist if you're dealing with a covert narcissist in your family. And I feel like it's so important to understand because covert narcissists are different than overt narcissists. The covert narcissist is basically the wolf in sheep's clothing. They are the same destructive, abusive people as somebody that is overtly abusive, but with a facade of the kind person, the innocent, the victim. You're the problem. The how could you ever think I'm trying to abuse you kind of person. And if you don't understand it, you can really start getting confused about who you are and what your reality is. And you wind up staying stuck in an abusive relationship even longer. So I wanted to give you guys these 4 signs that you might be dealing with a covert narcissist in your family. And if you are, make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to give you some tips on how to handle that situation. That being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I am a certified trauma-informed recovery coach. I'm the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live on Zoom and we do the inner work to work through trauma recovery together. It's not just about leaving toxic people. It's about uprooting the faulty wiring that they left in you. Okay, so let's dive into those covert signs of abuse. And the first one I want to talk about is the fact that everyone loves this person, this family member, except the ones that should. In other words, if it's a narcissistic parent, everyone thinks that you have the best parent except you. Everyone loves your narcissistic parent except the children of the narcissist, unless it's the golden child, who is groomed to become a covert narcissist as well. So if you find yourself hearing people tell you, oh, your parent is so amazing. I wish I had a dad like yours. I wish I had a mom like yours. And inside you're like, why don't I feel that way? It's a good chance that you're dealing with a covert manipulative narcissist. The same thing goes with a significant other. If everyone comes up to you like, oh, you struck the lottery with your spouse and your spouse is so amazing. And oh my goodness, you are so blessed. And you're not feeling blessed inside, it's a good chance it's because there is some form of covert manipulation and abuse taking place. Covert narcissists have 2 personalities. The personality that they show others, the people that they want to admire them, and then the personality that comes out when all doors are closed. And the challenge with this is that if you try to talk to anyone in your circle that is seeing the facade of the narcissist, no one will believe you. So you really tend to feel isolated in your perception and in your reality. And it can cause you, if you don't understand this, to start thinking that it's you because everyone else thinks they're amazing. So it must be you. And narcissists love when you think that way because they can use that to further abuse and you're blaming yourself. Number 2 is if you're in a constant state of confusion with your relationship. So way before I knew anything about narcissistic abuse, I had a friend of mine who sadly, I'm not even going to go into his story because it's so sad, but let's go back to his parents. He would talk about his parents and he and his mom were always in a state of confusion. They would ask things like, well, this happened. Is it normal that I'm upset about that? Or is it really a big deal that took place? Maybe I'm being too sensitive. You guys know these phrases. This happens when you've been gaslit. So when you're being gaslit, your reality is being twisted and confused. And so that leaves you in a constant state of what is going on? And is this normal that I feel this way? So if you find yourself asking questions like, well, I felt sad that happened. Is it normal for me to feel sad? And you question your emotions, you question your perspectives, there's a really good chance that you are dealing with a covert narcissist in your family. Number 3, a covert narcissist is extremely sensitive, and so is the overt narcissist, right? Overt narcissists are really sensitive to criticism. Even if it's constructive criticism, they don't want to hear it because they're perfect. Well, the covert narcissist, they're extremely sensitive to things that don't make sense. I'll give you a couple of examples. In one relationship that I was in, I remember this person was reading an article about, I think it was boxing. And all I said was, oh, I didn't know you liked that. And the rage that person felt didn't make sense. Whatever that meant to that person, like, I have no idea. but it came across as a rage. They were angry over a question that shouldn't upset anybody. So basically, a covert narcissist is so sensitive. They get angry about the way you move, about the way you think, about the way you breathe, about things that don't make sense. And if you don't understand that this is covert narcissistic abuse, you begin amputating things about you that you should not be amputating because you're not doing anything wrong. So it can be really confusing to a victim of covert abuse because their whole goal is to just make peace. And unfortunately, a lot of people that wind up in covert narcissistic relationships are people that are stuck in a fawn trauma response. The fawn trauma response is, I'm going to suppress me to make you feel okay so that I feel safe. And that usually comes about because of narcissistic abuse or emotional abuse in childhood. And they don't even realize that they're stuck in a fawning response. So when the narcissist rages and is so sensitive about things that don't make sense, the person that's in the relationship with them, if they're stuck in the fawn response, is changing and morphing and trying to find something to make the other person happy so that there's a measure of safety. And it never works. It never happens. And then the victim of that kind of abuse that's stuck in their fawn trauma response winds up shapeshifting so much they lose who they are. When the reality is that there is no perfect way, perfect formula to make the covert narcissist happy because they're not wired to be happy. And so it can just be this never-ending cycle of abuse and trying harder, abuse and being in the hamster wheel and shapeshifting, more abuse until you are a shell of a person in the end. And this kind of leads me to the fourth thing that you want to look for is the fact that you begin to change. You will get to a place where you don't even recognize yourself in the mirror or you don't recognize your personality. I remember in one relationship that I was in, within the first year of that relationship, a friend of mine told me, she's like, Michele, like ever since you've been with this person, you've lost your shine. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so not understanding narcissistic abuse, I took that comment to the person I was in a relationship with at that time. And their response was, oh, they're just jealous. They just don't want to see any good in this relationship. They're just trying to poke at you because they're not happy in their relationship. So we need to be careful and we need to not be so close to that person because they're not good for us. Now, since I didn't understand covert abuse, what did I do? I began separating from people that knew who I really was and that noticed my change. And because the covert narcissist will make it like that's a danger, separating from people that could validate my truth and spending more time with people that just validated the amazingness of the covert narcissist as I sunk further and further and deeper into losing myself. And so if you find that you are no longer you, you're losing the best pieces of you, then you're most likely dealing with a covert narcissist. So those are 4 things that you can look for. And now let's shift into, okay, yes, and yes. Now what? What can you do if you start noticing that? The first tip that I would recommend is for you to start learning to validate your reality, even if the other person doesn't agree with it. So for example, let's say you're not doing anything wrong. Let's say you're reading a book and they get mad at you for reading the book. When you don't understand narcissistic abuse, you stop being you stop doing you to try to make them happy. But you have to start being able to evaluate, is what I'm doing wrong? You have to start realizing that if they're mad because you're being you, then that's wrong. Not what you're doing, but they're mad because of your authentic expression at that moment. And you have to start realizing that you are allowed to do you while you're just being a normal person. You're not doing anything wrong. And they're also allowed to not like it and be upset about it. In other words, it's about giving up control. This was something that took me a long time to learn. I thought I had to convince this person by, look, reading a book is normal. It's okay. Look, I did everything else and I'm allowed to read for 2 minutes. And I thought I had to convince them and that when they were convinced, then I could be me. No, I'm trying to help you guys learn from my mistakes. What you need to do is realize and convince yourself and then give them permission to have whatever expression that they're going to have as long as you're safe. This advice does not apply if your physical life is in danger. So just flat out remember that. So you give them permission to do them. If their choice is to be mad at you for being you, it's not your job to convince them that you have free will and you are allowed to be yourself. Okay, the only person you need to convince is yourself. And that takes time. That's not an easy thing because there's a good chance that you have been groomed from childhood to feel like you're not allowed to be yourself. So it really involves upgrading your subconscious beliefs. It also involves working through your trauma responses, that fawn trauma response. Those responses are automatic. We don't choose them. They fling on, they come on automatically. And so working through them takes work, which, by the way, is what we do in Thriver School of Transformation. We don't just talk about trauma and the narcissist. We work with the nervous system and the pieces of us that are stuck and make healing challenging. Okay, but that's something that we have to learn and teach our nervous system, that people are allowed to be upset and we're also allowed to stay in our truth. The second tip that I want to give is less is more. So if you're dealing with this family member, rather than trying to convince them and working hard to get through to them, less is more. And for example, let's say they covertly abuse you by invalidating or gaslighting you, rather than trying to convince them this is gaslighting and look, and this is what you did, and this is how it makes me feel. They don't hear any of that. Learning how to just state your truth in a sentence like, well, that's how I see it. You're allowed to see it that way. This is my truth. Da, 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 no, that's not true. You're just crazy. Well, you're allowed to think that. This is my truth. Okay. The more you try to convince them, the more you try to get through to them, you enter the ring with them and they will spin you until you're confused. So those are two tips to start helping you to kind of get your power back.